couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, last Saturday, essentially, that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were put into conservatorship in the United States. This means, in my view, that we have an opportunity over time to unwind or to have these mortgage lenders reduce the size of their activities and essentially either be put back into a government in a very small way or actually unwound. That means that I believe that the best course of action will be to let others than Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac handle the mortgage origination in the United States going forward. I think that the difficulties that Fannie and Freddie ended up in were in some sense caused by their change in policy from being lenders to those who could have sufficient income to support their payment of mortgage payments, and were employed to that of an organization that essentially relied on the growth in the price of homes on a subset of their mortgage originations, namely acquiring subprime mortgages in 2006 and 2008 through 2007, where they suffer the largest percentage of their losses. Some would argue that the government encouraged them to take over some of these subprime loans to actually create a situation where the extent of the mortgage crisis in the United States would appear to be muted. Obviously that failed to occur, and as a result they had to write off huge losses on these contracts. The government, in my view, set the stage for the subprime crisis by, in 2003, attacking Fannie Mae for its accounting practices, attacking them for their accounting practices, their hedge accounting practices, hedge accounting being a very arcane way of accounting for hedging of mortgages affecting both their income. The result of this attack was to put both these agencies in what I call the penalty box, restricting their activities at a time when the mortgage refinancing waves were very large in the United States. That in turn resulted in a large rush of new suppliers of mortgage contracts into the market, reducing the standard way mortgages were put out in the market. The standard way was that individuals needed to have sufficient income and employment to be able to pay off in mortgages. The new way relied on housing appreciation or price appreciation to be able to refinance your mortgage and to be able to pay off on the new mortgage, the previous mortgage. As a result of this change caused by, in my view, the government putting Fannie and Freddie into the penalty box, it set the stage for the crisis that unfolded when housing prices slowed down, and as a result, the ability to refinance housing ended. I think that we should look back on this period of history and ask the question whether Fannie and Freddie should have been a government-sponsored entity, which allowed the market not to be able to distinguish whether it was a government-sponsored agency where the government would guarantee mortgage payments or not. And we have to separate that, because with the advantages that Freddie and Fannie had, they were able to borrow in the capital markets at a lower rate than competing organizations, and as a result grew their mortgage portfolios dramatically. The difference between a public and private entity has to be very clear to the public. It has to be very clear, or else we, over time, will end up in difficulty, as we found in this particular case, because a political entity interferes with the private sector, and the public entity in turn then uses the public advantage that might to increase its private value, but at the cost of all the other citizens in the United States. I think that we should learn a lesson from this. We should go back in time and study whether this was a good idea. And if we can study this idea and say what the net benefits and costs were, my belief is that we will end up in a situation where the cost will be very high, or deemed to be very high. That'll give us as a predicate to decide whether we should again enter these ventures in the future. But I think we have to not only think of the management and the incentives for management, but what were the political advantages and what were the costs to the taxpayers and society by entering into these joint ventures between the public and the private sectors.